Flashbacks. Past players, past legends.
Tonight we are greatly pleasured to welcome aboard Darryl Wakelin, of course, Port Adelaide SANFL. Then, interestingly, Adelaide didn't play a game at Adelaide. We'll get to that, Wakes. 115 games at St Kilda, and then back to Port Adelaide, 146 games at Port. Of course, a member of the 2004 Premiership side and also a member of the 2007 Cliffhanger Grand Final side, Wakes. Welcome aboard, Darryl.
We're not going to talk about that, are we now? That was a distant memory.
Yeah.
We'll bring that up later.
Talking about it all, ask as many questions as you like.
Hey, mate. Welcome aboard, mate.
Pleasure. Absolute pleasure.
We're just softening you up a little bit, but like we do with all of our guests, we like to sort of find out where you started, and obviously you were born in Whyalla, and some of your junior clubs that you played at.
Off to Kimber.
Yeah, so moved to Kimber as 6-month-old twins we were. Mum and Dad had moved to Whyalla. Dad completed his Boilermaker apprenticeship, so always off the land in Kimber. And so we ended up back in town. And, Kelly Footy Club was one of 4 football clubs in town and very successful. The Kelly Roosters right through the 60s, 70s, 80s. They had some absolute star players. So, that's where it all started. My old man was a coach there and president of the football club, so very involved in the community, very involved in that football club. And then right through to the age of 12 when we moved to Port Lincoln and played with the Boston Football Club down there. So they were the 2 clubs that really we sort of cut it through our junior career.
And you did most of your schooling at Port Lincoln, mate?
Yeah, so we did end of year 8 at Kimber Area School, and then we went to the high school, Port Lincoln High School. So,
yep,
really great grooming ground down there. Some really high quality footballers that we come up against. Some really outstanding junior Indigenous players that we played against. Obviously, the famous Mallee Park Footy Club.
Yep.
And against the Burgoyne boys' dads and the Picketts and all them the Davies over there, famous football names in the Port Lincoln area. So, we were playing A-grade footy at sort of 15, 16, played in the local Mortlock Shield as 16-year-olds. And that was really a taste of sort of, really playing against adults, getting a little bit of bit of an understanding where the benchmark was, where we thought we could take our footy, and obviously a massive Port Adelaide zone over there where, rich recruitment. Obviously Norwood these days, but still a very rich recruitment ground for Port Adelaide back in the day.
And back then as juniors, were both you and Shane down in defence, or one at one end, one at the other?
Bit of everything,
okay.
really. Yeah, I mean, being a little bit taller, I suppose you get thrown into the ruck. So I was probably more the ruckman. Shane was sort of more centre forward, but I was a little bit taller than him, a bit more physical. So that's where I played majority of my junior footy, and until really the ages of 17, 18, which we can get onto further. But that was sort of where I cut my teeth. I played forward a little bit, but that was my craft. I loved it. I loved being a ruckman as a junior, but and I was a state ruckman with Sam Smart in 91 under Russell Ebert, Pete Carey, and Jimmy Fantasia.
I reckon Howes, Tom Harley, was that Howes' year as well?
Harley was a year or two after.
Yeah, after.
Yep. So,
so
that
Vander's
year was,
year.
Rashudo, Benny Hart, Sanderson, Sean Wellman, Scott Burns.
Fair side.
I'm sure I'm missing a few. I think there was about 10 that went on to play, 8 or 10 played over 200 games. Nick Holland. So it was one of them teams out of the box. We won the championships that year, and great memories even to this day of and still some great friendships with all of the guys, Rue and
Yeah.
and Benny Hart. You don't see them as much around the place, but certainly a lifelong bond with them guys.
Oh, you'd see Real at Prince's in the last few years, and when he was losing his kids at Prince's was always entertaining too, Wakes. And that was one big Saturday morning where he lost 2. That was very amusing, yes. It was a fair effort by Real. We said he had 6, so he could afford to lose a couple.
Fair call.
Yeah.
So getting to Port Adelaide, was that through the 15 Sandboy Cup and then the 17s, or straight into the 17s?
Yeah, so Sandboy Cup, we would come across in the 15s and play Sandboy Cup. So that was really the start of the Port Adelaide football program. We would come across and do junior programs in the off-season. But it progressed through there. I missed a year with football when I was 15, so I missed that Sandboy Cup year just through back. I think I had stress fracture of the back looking at it.
Was that growing just so quickly, or?
Yeah, it just grew through that period, sort of 14 to 16. So, but yeah, we were invited to come across. Every year there was 2, 3 or 4 lads invited across. Bobby Clayton was a great clubman at Port Adelaide who spent a huge amount of time on the Eyre Peninsula. Who was a very big part of it, along with Don McSweeney and a great mate of ours, Chris Nat, as well, who we lived with when we first come down. So, as it was back in the day, you boarded out. They were kind enough to pay our board for the first 12 months, and that really gave us a grounding and got a bit of a footing into, cutting our teeth with 17s and 19s football in that first year in 91.
You're playing finals then with Port then?
Yeah, so we played 17 under 17s, Shane and I, for the first half of the year. And when I came back, I from Till Cup experience, we were put up into the 19s. Shane was sort of in that next sort of 5 or 6 as emergency to go to Darwin for the Till Cup, so he missed out. But we both were promoted to the under 19s halfway through the season. We went on to win the Premiership that year against South Adelaide. And, so once again, all 3 brothers played in that Premiership 19s. My older brother, Michael had come down 2 or 3 years earlier. So he was sort of top age 19s at that stage. And, and then, so that was an amazing first year of out of home in Adelaide and working out what sort of future you could have. But there was about 10 of us invited out to Crows training at the end of the Crows' first season. And it was still, that 91 Till Cup team was still part of the moratorium. So the Crows had access to a certain amount of players. So about 10 of us.
And it was,
about 10, I think. Yeah. So they'd used up a few, and then they still had another 5 or 6 that they could take. So there was Scott Burns, Sam Smart, Peter Turner, Roo, Hardy, Wellman, guys like that were all invited. Sanderson. There was about 8 or 10.
I may still get into Cornsey, where Cornsey said they thought Scott Burns was just a run-of-the-mill halfback flanker. And to this day, I saw enough from it Nord that I said, geez, Cornsey, he was always way better than that. I'm still buggered by that one.
I think he got drafted a year later. It was 92 when got drafted to Collingwood. So there was a couple. There's always a few that get through the net, isn't there? Yeah. So that was sort of. I never really felt at home there during the pre-season. It was just one of them things. It was Port Adelaide and them, and as a Port Adelaide person, all you were focused on and your priority was to get a league game. For Port Adelaide, and that was my focus going into the 92 season as a pretty raw sort of 78 kilo, 6'4" ruckman, transitioning into centre half forward sort of player at that time. That's where I played all the next couple of years.
Okay.
Did you have any contact with John Cale, obviously, during that time?
Well, Jack was always I played one or two reserves games at the end of the 92 season. So I promoted up, but it wasn't really until that 91-92 pre-season where I was in the senior squad. You know, Nathan Buckley was still around the place. We were coming off, you know, the 3 in a row, 88, 89, 90. We had a quieter one, 91, and then 92 obviously ended up being a premiership year. So I played all the pre-season comp that year. And then I did a knee through the 92 season, just a cartilage, and I missed out on the draft in 92. My twin brother was drafted to St Kilda, 31. So there was, but then I got my knee. It was a really poor finish to the year, so I missed a lot of football. Once again, had another big pre-season. I was picked up the following season in 93. Through that period, a lot of us were sort of playing reserves footy. It was what you did.
Yeah, I know. It's quite incredible.
That's where you learnt
your trade.
Craft.
Yeah,
you learn your craft, learn your trade there, and that was great grooming, really, under Brian Fairclough there, and obviously getting a touch of the brilliance of Jack and getting an understanding of the messaging and what's required. So, but some amazing leaders through that period too, being in that senior squad. Amazingly led by Coochie Phillips, who retired at the end of the 93 season, which opened up an opportunity for me. But Timmy Geneva and Steve Williams, Roger Delaney, all them legends of our club who, you know, were obviously a huge part of that success from sort of 88 through to 98, really.
Now, obviously, you touched on what we were talking about earlier with you being an Adelaide player initially. How did you find sort of going back and forth between Adelaide and Port? We know the rivalries there and the us and them and all of that jazz that goes on with Port and the Crows. But how did you find as a player sort of going from one program to another program and back and forth throughout the year?
Yeah, good question. Look, I was a naive young 17-year-old, quite immature. I was living with my two brothers. It was sort of up to me, really. Tim Johnson interviewed me before they drafted me and said, "Where are you going to play as a footballer?" And I said, "Well, you guys are the recruiters. You tell me. I'm just a 17-year-old kid here trying to work it out." So he said, "You're not going to be big enough to be a ruckman." And I said, "Well, David Hines has had a pretty successful career as a ruckman, but probably knew deep down I had to find a new position." And that's when I started playing full forward, centre half forward. I struggled a lot going back to Crows. I sort of pretty much made a decision, even though I'd trained in that 93 season, was drafted in 93 season. Yep. I made a conscious decision not to go to training. And back then it was really only that top 34 or whatever who were contracted. So I didn't get $1. There was no incentive, really, unless you're in that top squad. I wasn't playing league football at the time, so it's not like I was going to jump out of the reserves and straight into AFL, which I think it did. I'm sure you got a story.
Yeah, no, it did. No, it happened a bit.
Couple of times.
Yeah, both ways. Andrew Eccles went one way, and Tom Harley, incredibly, his one league game for Port, played reserves for Nord 2 weeks later. So it did happen. It was
there was a bit of that.
Aaron Keating was another one.
But look, to be quite frank, as a Port Adelaide, it was, I was right amongst that journey of the initial approach to going to the AFL. That was to before the Crows went in, and then there was just simmering in the background. So that was there in the background, and I never felt comfortable with Adelaide. And I got I received a couple little injuries through that year. Never really got fully fit again. And I was doing year 12 that year as well. And really, it's sort of first year pharmacy that year.
Yeah.
And
you're a bit more academic than the average Port Adelaide person too, Wakes. Come on, surely you would have fitted in more at Adelaide than that, mate.
I was probably persistent, pretty persistent, like a lot of Port Adelaide people. And I didn't know at the time that I didn't really believe that I could maybe have a career at AFL. It was still that amateur sort of sport, and the money was good if you played 22 games of footy for the year.
Yeah.
But if you weren't sort of contracted, it was there was no money. So it was a very much a hedge your bets sort of period in my life as a young kid, just trying to work it out on your own,
And then 94, you make it into the Port Adelaide League side and have the ultimate success.
And win the Jack Odie medal.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing year. Still some of my great memories to this day. We have our 30-year reunion this year, which will be in August. It's on my birthday weekend, actually, quite conveniently. And it's Port Adelaide versus the Eagles down at Alberton, so that's going to be a great catch-up with all old teammates. It was an incredible year. I was in second-year pharmacy. I'd been delisted by the Crows the start of that year or the end of 93, and I just thought, I've just got to get myself as fit as I can, the fittest I've ever been. I have my brother who's moved to Melbourne.
Yep.
He's good enough to be on an AFL list. Well, I'm good enough to be on an AFL list, but I just had to put some games together. So, and that's what we did. It was certainly a bit of I think even Jack will say, it was a bit of a motley crew that we pulled together that year. We had a core group of Premiership players, the guys who were sort of by that stage, 26, 27. Timmy and Rog and Rowan was back from St Kilda, and Rog was back. And so it was a core group, but then you had, probably 4 or 5 of us young lads who are sort of 18 years and under, Troy Olsen, Andrew McLeod, Simon Pedler, Steve Carter, who was a Till Cup mate of mine.
Good player.
So you had that brought in this youth, which they would do most years, but there was a bit of a blockage the last couple of years because there was so much experience at the top end. But Kuchi retired the year before, Greg Phillips. That gave me my opportunity at centre half back. After finishing the 93 season, it's playing down back in the reserves. I really launched that and made it my position. And even though I broke a collarbone mid-season, missed about 3 or 4 games, but then got back and got some fitness, and we had a really good run into finals, and albeit some pretty horrific results. One horrific result in the finals against the Eagles. Eagles have been the top side. They were the form side. They were really the benchmark. We had beaten them by about 10, maybe even 12 goal at home in the last minor round at Alberton. Gave them a real touch-up. But then they smacked us by 80-odd points in the
second semi
or something.
Yeah. And
then we were able to bounce back, and we got over Centrals in overtime.
That's
right.
It was overtime, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, overtime game. And then we were able to get through, and then we smacked Centrals in the prelim to go into the final.
And, of course, the grand final, geez, Timmy G was just smart, sucked in, I think it was Kennedy, but either way, sucked in a Woodville West Torrens player who retaliated. Because 2 minutes before quarter time, you're 6 goals down. All of a sudden, you kick 2 goals in that last minute. You come in with a bit of impetus. Where if that hadn't happened, you get into quarter time 6-0. It's a totally different game, as we,
Yeah, no, it's so true. Everyone asks Timmy Ginver. Wow. He was a Till Cup captain, twice All-Australian in his younger years, and they said what was so great about Timmy? He didn't have speed. He couldn't kick more than 35 metres. And you looked at him and you go, well, what? He's not a tall guy. But he had the most brilliant hands. He knew exactly where the ball was going. Yes. He knew the moments. He knew the big moments in a game.
Ferocious competitor.
He was a ferocious competitor and just an incredible leader. Yeah. And like a lot of great leaders, they have this great balance between just being an absolute competitor but also having the ability to put your arm around you and to have a laugh and to bring the team along with him. So that was a massive moment in the game. We were able to steady, get back, and we just thought we kept chipping away, and we thought we'd nearly kicked ourselves out of it in that third quarter. I think we kicked maybe 9 or 10 points. And was still a couple goal down at three-quarter time. And Scotty Hodges had about 2 touches, and I think Jack might have had a few words to him, saying we've got a pretty handy full forward sitting on the back flank, so if you're not going to get a kick, and that, we might send him forward. And that was Mark Tyler, who obviously was a outstanding footballer for our club, who, quite amazingly, we talk about the Jack Cale as a coach, and the way he was able to understand the connection between the players and how important a player like Mark Tyler was for that squad, and just found a way to find a spot for him in the team. And he had an outstanding year as that sort of half-backer with Norther. I was centre half-back, and we had some real experience down back.
Mate, you sort of stole my thunder a little bit there. I was going to talk about how we've had Port Adelaide guests on before. We've had Timmy on, and we've obviously talked about Jack before, and even we've talked about how Port Adelaide on paper haven't really been the strongest side, but Jack was able to get the best out of everybody, and it showed time and time again that you were really playing for the coach, but also he knew how to get the best out of you as well.
Yeah, Jack was a pretty complex character. And as a young guy coming in, you just wanted his respect. You never knew when you had it. I probably still don't know these days. He was that kind of guy, but that's what drove you as a player. And you even talk to guys like Timmy and all that. They felt exactly the same way. He had this personality where he would just believe in you. You felt you could just do anything, but at the same time, he had you playing on edge, and that your position was not guaranteed, and that you had to keep performing at the level that was required of a Port Adelaide League footballer. And something you can't really touch or see, but that's the effect it had on me, certainly as a young guy. What an incredible story that has been for over such a long period.
So many players, and you get that the comment just consistently gets made, not only publicly like we are now, but privately even more so, where the Port guys say, the mystique of Cale, where he could sell to an Adrian Setre that you'll beat this Platten bloke and things like that, which is just bullshit to have managed to sell it, but he was the master at doing it. And how many times Port had win, and you'd look at the Port side on paper as a Nord man and go, geez, how in the hell? But it was the master of, and Jack was always keep it simple. His game plan was never anything particularly scientific or anything like that, but geez, you kept winning when it counted.
Yeah, and we had a pretty handy full forward there for quite a number of years, which admittingly got us out of trouble in a couple of those matches. Admittingly also that he, like I said, in that 94 one, he had 2 touches to three-quarter time. So just shows the heart of a guy like that. Big performer, incredible reader of the football, and an incredible finisher under pressure. So, that was a pretty amazing time to be a part of that. To get that win really gave me a launching pad and gave me that confidence to go that next step in my career.
And of course, you would have been rapt to get picked up by St Kilda for the chance to play with Shane again, mate.
Yeah, look, it was good. I'd actually said to the Crows when they were looking at drafting me that they picked me at 11, I think, in that 93 pre-season draft. And Carlton were going to take me at number 12 as a centre-half forward. I was playing all my games centre-half forward, full forward. But then I'd actually said to them, look, I'd just let me pass. I'd like to go to Melbourne. I want to get over there, whether I go to Carlton or whether St Kilda can do a deal. So that's the way it ended up. It was part of that whole Lockett deal. I'd been on the list before, so I could be listed by Fremantle. And then obviously it was a pre-arranged trade deal, which we see quite common these days.
Yeah.
But it was a hell of a complex deal involving Lockett first committing to Sydney and then a heap of draft picks. And then I was a bit of the last piece that traded to Sydney for Scotty Waters and then traded onto St Kilda as part of that whole draft thing.
Yeah, it's so quite complex, those deals. You've really got to go through them with a fine-tooth comb to work out sort of winners and losers in the end because it's so bloody complex.
And now there's points attached to it as well, which makes it even harder again. Yeah,
I admit as a footy moron, I may have gone through a few of those on various times. So, and then you've ended up at St Kilda. What were your first thoughts there and that at St Kilda, Darryl?
Oh, look, I was super excited. I knew there was change happening, obviously under Stan Alves and Andrew Plimpton was president at the time. Sadly, he passed away this week. But he was such a he was such a lovable guy, just a driven guy, just with such enthusiasm for the football club to make them better. And through his leadership and Stan's leadership, we really we backed in us younger guys. There was probably about I think there was something in that 95 year, 7 of us under the ages of sort of 19. But they backed us in. They picked us. The likes of Joel Smith, Ozzie Jones, Matty Lappin had some games under the belt.
Tony Brown, I reckon.
Tony Brown was playing. So, and then you had the older guys who were, still had a lot of footy. Obviously, Spider Everett was still 19. And then you had Lowe, Harvey, Burke, Winmar, Shanahan, guys like that. And Danny Frawley in his last season. So, it was a very exciting time. It was, but with a club that had been starved of success, you knew it was going to take a little bit of time, and then the biggest challenge was going to be able to holding it all together and to continue to back the young kids and support them in the way that the club should, and basically to keep that group together for another sort of 8-10 years, and that's always the challenge, isn't it?
Of course, you then played in St Kilda's 1996 AFL Ansett Australia Cup.
The highlight of the career, surely.
One of the most ugly trophies ever there's been. It was as good as those AFLX trophies, Wakes. You see the St Kilda guy standing next to it, just sort of going, geez, that's ugly sort of thing. Yeah.
Well, it was back in the day. We sort of, being a young side, the club really felt a priority to win as many of them games and to be as fit as we could be coming into the pre-season. So obviously back then it wasn't a round robin. You had to have a knockout. So you had to win 4 games to win the thing, which was always a good thing for a young group. So to win that. There were some pretty ugly ones with the Wizard Cup a few years later too, Rolly. So, but good memories. I always thought it was a good sign for the club, especially a young team, that if you could have some momentum going forward, and as you get more established as a squad, they're probably not as important. But
that's
when
fair.
When you have a young group and you're wanting to really show something and give the supporters a belief in a young squad, I think it's really critical, and that was massive for us in '96. Albeit a pretty average season, I think we only ended up winning 8 games after that, but still there were signs, and just showed you had to get another, 30, 50 games under these young legs, and we could give it a real crack.
And of course you did in '97. You had it, finished minor premiers. Unluckily lost Everett getting injured. That was crucial.
First final.
Before you get to that, obviously you debuted in round 195. By '97, you played 17 of the 22 games in that season. Did you sort of find that during that year you found your spot, because 96 was a little bit of an off year, but did you find 97 you'd found your way in the AFL, you'd finally made it?
Yeah, I mean, you never really think you make it in AFL, but 96, I sort of just wavered. It was probably a little bit directionless, probably, to be quite frank. I didn't really understand how good a player I could be at that level. Was I worthy of it? Was I deserved of it? So it was sort of probably that mindset looking back on it. Start of 97, ended 96, we traded in a few players, and it was sort of, I wasn't getting a game early in the year, wasn't fit enough, wasn't focused enough, and I just remember about 4 rounds in and saying I just need to really have a crack at it and get myself strong and fit, and that was the real start of thinking that, come on, stop messing around. I need to really give this a proper crack, and I'm only letting the club down. I need to perform, and I was a young up and coming leader at the time, and I just needed to get my consistency right.
Was footy full time by then, Wakes?
I probably put a lot of pressure on myself as a 22-year-old, but
was footy full time by then, Darryl?
More 99 when Tim Watson came in, which we'll touch on later. Yeah, but it was sort of more that amateur, semi-professional. Train Monday, Tuesday, Thursday nights, maybe one morning, rehab on a Sunday, play every Saturday afternoon.
Were you working at all then?
I was working in a pharmacy. I'd taken a couple of years off from study, and I was working at a local pharmacy. Yeah.
Oh.
So, but probably socialising a little bit too much, really. Made the most of it.
Yeah, I reckon you're always pretty good at that, Wax. Yep.
So, but it's all part of the journey. And but 97 was a really, and 98 for that matter, was really a couple of really special years. We were probably top 2 teams in the comp, and we had a huge run, 10 in a row, coming into that final series, and.
Losing Everett, as we said.
Lost Everett, and we lost Lazar Vidovic, who was an excellent
that's
workhorse. They were a good tandem ruck there, and Spider was resting forward as well. So, it put a lot on Brett Cook, who was our third sort of string ruck,
Hill boy,
who did a great job in the prelim. Corey McKernan went down and did his shoulder from memory.
That's right.